Hi everyone, welcome to another Elevation Games Spooky Spooktacular game review. Today we are going over one of the true classics in the genre here, Betrayal at House on the Hill.
Yeah, this game is always a crowd pleaser. I think that Avalon Hill knew what they were doing when they put this guy out.
Yeah, and this, I think we have the second edition here. There have been lots of editions of this game, and a new one just came out. They were promoting it when we were at Gen Con.
All over the place.
Yeah. Which is odd. We didn't actually get to see it up close. We just saw signs for it everywhere. But my understanding that the game is basically the same. The concept is pretty universal. You and a bunch of friends. You're sort of playing in a B horror movie.
That's such a good description. Such a great description there, Jeremy.
So, you and your friends are all these sort of B movie characters. I'm gonna say stereotypes, but that's really unfair for a couple of reasons. One of which is the little minis they give you are actually very diverse in representation.
Yeah. I love the fact that they come already painted.
Yeah.
So I don't have the temptation to try to poorly paint them.
Yeah.
They're very detailed.
They look really nice. Everything in this package looks really nice. But this is one of the first games, I think, that really sort of introduced folks to the concept of building a modular board as you go, tile placement. Because basically on your turn, you're going to move your character, and if you move into a blank space, you draw a tile from the stack of tiles you've got and place it down. You have to make sure the doors match up so that you actually get into the room. But that's really the only requirement. On the back, it'll tell you if the tile can go on the upper story, the ground floor, or the basement,
Right.
or any of them. And then you and your friends are just sort of, as you explore this house, you're sort of building it out as you go. Which is a neat little feature. And each one of those little spaces is going to have a symbol on it, telling you to draw either an event card, an omen card, or an item card. The items are all universally good. You want to get those. Events can go either way. It could be good for you, bad for you. And then the omens are what you sort of track. That's sort of your countdown. You're going to roll a check every time after you roll an omen card, and eventually you will fail that check. And when that happens, that's when the eponymous betrayal happens. And that's where the game gets really interesting. You stop exploring at that point, and one of you becomes the betrayer, and they get to read from the traitor's tome, and the survivors get to read from the survival tome. And the traitor actually has to go into another room so that the two of you can't hear each other. They'll have their own goals that they're trying to meet. You'll have your own goals that you're trying to meet. They're, of course, always at cross purposes. It could be anything from the traitor is a vampire trying to turn everyone in the house into vampires, zombies. I think there are 50-something different scenarios in here. So lots of replayability.
Yes, so we've played this game, obviously more than a few times, and we have yet to replay the same scenario twice. So there is a lot of different, like Jeremy said, a lot of different scenarios that you can go through once that betrayal happens. So we've talked about this too, where the person that chooses the last omen that pushes you over the edge, that is the person that becomes the betrayer normally. If you have people in your group that you're playing with, this is just do as we say, not as we have done poorly in the past. If you have people in your group that will not feel comfortable having to branch out on their own, then you can, at that point, assign the person who will be the betrayer. So some folks are better about that than others. I know I personally would feel really self-conscious going in and doing it, we played this once with a friend who English was their second language, so there was a lot of things that they felt uncomfortable with, just like in the normal play of the game. And then they were the one that ended up being the betrayer, and you could tell like the energy in the room just kind of went down because they were very self-conscious, very uncomfortable, and so it went from being like a super fun game night to something that was just a little less fun. So just keep that in mind as you go through this, and you're looking at who the betrayer is going to be. You could be one of those people that's just in a group where everybody can go out and just handle that. I admire those folks. That is confidence that I personally don't necessarily have. As evidenced by the fact that I rely on Jeremy to drive games for us, or to manage games for us, because it's just not a skill that I personally have when I'm going through these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is kind of a house rule of ours that, honestly, the game doesn't tell you this. We, I think, would both encourage you to adopt this. If you are teaching this to a group for the first time, when you get to the betrayal part, just go ahead and jump on that grenade yourself. And be like, look, normally this would be random, but since y'all are learning, I will go be the traitor this time. It's really fun to play the traitor, but in our experience, you usually want to get people through at least one game so that they get a grasp on it, and then when you're at the end of it, they're all like, hey, can we play that again? Which we have seen happen many times with this.
Yes.
At that point, you have people who want to do this. But there is a lot of, especially if it's first time players, there's a lot of weight put on the shoulders of this person.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we talk a lot when we're talking about game reviews about our friends that we get together and have like burger flips, happy hour at someone's house, and it's not uncommon to bust out a board game, but we like to play, a little bit of a heavier game. For them, they're perfectly happy playing Yahtzee all night or, something like that. So they're not as invested in a heavier board game. So this game, I find in that group, is a perfect game. It has a great theme, especially during this time of year, during spooky season. It's great like in the fall, especially if you've got like one of those like kind of cool, rainy fall nights. And then also if you have friends that are into, horror movies or like that kind of more spooky side of things. So in this group that we play with, we have one friend who will play this. Anytime we put it on the table, he gets super into it. I'm talking about Jason, in case you didn't know. As soon as I said that, and like normally when you play a game, he's going through the motions, he'll play it with you. But when we play this game, he gets super into everything. And like, are you sure you want to place that tile there? Are you sure you want to move there? Like, and he gets really into like the strategy of this game and how to play, and he makes everyone else get like super jazzed about it. So it's always fun when we pull this game out with that group, just because it's a game that everybody seems to really get into the theme of.
Yeah, it's a great crossover game for those folks who typically will only go for lighter games.
Yeah.
And I would say it's also a really good sort of way to test the waters. If you take
Absolutely.
That group through it, and there are some of them who are like, okay, I kind of see how that step up to heavier games can happen. I'm interested in something more.
Mm-hmm.
Then those are the people you maybe can take on up and try something heavier with eventually.
That's right.
But this is a really great middle ground for that.
Mm-hmm.
And it introduces you to a lot of really basic concepts that you'll encounter in those heavier games, like your skill tests. It's very Dungeons and Dragons in that way, right? You have...
Well, it is from Wizards.
It is. You have the stats on your neat little character stat
I have one right here,
token.
actually.
Yeah. Your knowledge, your sanity, your might, your speed. And those can all go up and down based on things that happen during the game. And typically they determine when you come up against an event or a test of some kind, it tells you how many dice you get to roll, right? For those of us who play a lot of games, this is pretty familiar territory. But again, for people who are less into the hobby, it's a really easy way to introduce them to some of those concepts that get reused a lot.
That's right. And while we're talking about this card, there is one thing that I really love about this too, is that you have one of these for each of your players. This is 3 to 6 players. So you have 6 of them. They are reversible. So you use the same mini because the characters are similar enough that the mini can apply to both of them. And they have similar but a little bit different stats on each side. So it also gives folks that you're playing this game with the ability to look at and say, okay, this side's a little faster, but their sanity's a little lower, so do I want to have a little bit of a slower speed and higher likelihood to survive? Like, you can see folks, like, there are some people that you can hand it to them, and if this side's up, that's the side they play with. And then you see the other people who actually start thinking about and strategizing there from the start about which character side they want to play.
Okay, let's talk negatives, for lack of a better term. Obviously, we really like this game.
We really love this game.
There's a reason it's a classic. I would say the biggest negative is going to be that player count. You have to have a minimum of 3 players to play it.
Yes.
And I would say, honestly, if you really want to get the most out of this game and enjoy it, you need to get as close to maxing out those players as you can.
And now, we've played this at 3, 4, 5, and 6. Mm-hmm. You definitely get, we even played it with 7 one night, just kind of wedging our way into making that work. But the closer you get to 6, the more fun you're having. When we play this with 3, it was okay until the betrayal happened. And then it was a lot of kind of us versus them. Not as much fun as like when you have like 5 people versus the 1. It's a lot more friendly even. But the game plays best at 6.
Yeah.
Second best at 5, and then backwards through that player count. So getting together that many folks to play a game can be a challenge sometimes, but if you're one of those lucky people that just has that solid group where you can come in and max out those player counts every time, then this is the game for you.
Yeah, and that's honestly, I think, the biggest drawback to this thing. Other than that, it's a really, really well-tuned, honed game. The writing is great, in all of these different haunts that you can end up in. It's a classic. It's been around forever. You could buy it at Target before Target started their whole board game push, back when most of what Target had was Monopoly, you could get this. So it's
47 different versions of Monopoly and then Betrayal at Hill House.
So it's
Betrayal
wildly
at the House on the Hill.
Yes.
I always butcher the name of this ever since the Hill House series came out on Netflix. I was like, Jeremy, did they make this about that board game?
So it's widely available. It's very affordable. I think you can get this thing for $30-$40 typically.
Yeah, that's a steal. If you are gonna have the folks to come together and play this, $40 even is a great investment for this, because again, it's different every single time you play it. The mechanics are the exact same.
Yeah.
But this is one where the theme and the story just like are so heavy and independent based on the scenario that you're doing. And so with those different if you're playing a different scenario, it's like playing a whole new game with the same old mechanic, Yeah.
And they differ wildly. I mean, there are things in here that we've played through that you will not, I promise, you will not expect. Yes, it has some of the stuff that you would expect. You've got zombies, vampires, werewolves, all the typical scary stuff, right? But I guarantee you there are scenarios in here that you will not see coming. And with 50 plus of them to get through, I mean, you're going to have to play this a whole lot before you exhaust it.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
So, Betrayal at House on the Hill, I'd say we definitely recommend. It's pretty high up there on our list of spooky games for spooky season.
Yes, and just game in general to play. But especially this time of year, like during that spooky season, this is the one. If you can only have one, this is the one. I have loved seeing on our social channels everyone's pictures, because this didn't just only come out on our table. I think it came out on every single play table around the world, because this game is just that game. Okay, so there, if you have a 3D printer and you are like us and you like to hop on the Thingiverse and see what's available upgrade-wise for a game, there are a whole lot of really rad upgrades that you can make for this game. So one of them is there are several player, like little player disc holders that have easier sliders. They're color coordinated. Some of them look to me better than others, but it truly is just in the eye of the beholder. They all have a really solid design and lots of good reviews going out there. You also can pick up the minis if you do want to paint your own. You can get those and paint them. But I think that the absolute most magnificent thing I've ever seen on the Thingiverse as far as board games are concerned is for this game. Some genius designer has gone out there and made a dice tower that looks like the house. How cool is that? First of all, that is insanely rad. And it's a really smooth print. It's a really dope print. And then, but in addition to it looking like the house on here, which just looks rad when you see it on a table, it has a little place where you can hold your dice on it just to keep the dice out of the way and then drop them down into the dice tower. And truly, it's one of the most magnificent designs I've ever seen. I think it's so dope. I think it's so dope. So like clearly you can see I get excited about those types of upgrades. If you feel like that too, like just pop in Betrayal at House on the Hill into the Thingiverse and look at all of the upgrades that they have, because there are so many. But I really like the player disc holders, and that dice tower is so dope. It's so dope. I don't know if you can tell how much I like it, but there's that.
Okay, well, recommendation from us at least.
2 thumbs up.
Betrayal at House on the Hill, a great spooky game for spooky season.
Yeah.
If you like this sort of thing, be sure to come back here, subscribe, like, go to our website, elevation.games, and sign up for our newsletter there. We'll have a lot more spooky stuff coming out as we approach Halloween here.
That's right.
So stay tuned.
See you next time.
Thanks, everybody.